what was I going to ask? Shoot. Oh yeah, the thing is, you know, we're just talking about the class coming back to school and having already had some online courses and being familiar with Canvas and what we'd like to get out of the course. And you both sort of want to know more about the body and also be able to explain it to others. That's actually one of the big reasons why I teach, is because I want to have as many of us understand sort of fundamentally how this body stuff works, because we can make better healthcare decisions on our own, besides, you know, getting it as a credit to go to a nursing or whatever we would like to do. That's most of us go into healthcare somehow. Usually that happens, that people show up in anatomy, end up in healthcare. So that's the way that I structure the class. We can actually go right into it. And one of the rules that I have in my Zooms is you just interrupt me. I'd like it the dialogue sort of thing, if that's okay with you guys. Because I can't, if I share the screen, it's hard for me to see the reactions and read the chat unless we have somebody who's doing that for me. But if you just have a question, just, you know, say it out and don't worry about interrupting me. So there's a little different than how I do it in the class itself in person. Does that make sense? And why don't you just go give me feedback?
That makes sense.
All right. And now, so can you guys see my screen at this point?
Yes.
Okay. So when you open the Canvas, when you go through the dashboard and then you go into the home page, this is the view that you guys should have. My name is Christoph Muhlinghaus. Hello. People call me Dr. M. It's just easier that way. I've been doing this work, I don't know, for about 20 years or so. I also have a private practice in Oakland that I do chiropractic and body work on. That's sort of my main gig. And so, but you kind of get that sieved through a little bit into my course, of course. Those kind of things that I see in practice, especially when we get to the muscle and the bone stuff, of course. That's my meat and potatoes. I like to be very, very accessible to you guys. Look, that's my pooch. I took this picture probably yesterday, I guess. My little 11-month-old golden doodle that's 70 pounds and making me go out with him for, I don't know, about 4 hours a day or so running around. But I want to be very accessible to you guys. And so Pronto is definitely the easiest way to catch me. I have my phone on me, obviously, all the time. I am accessible all the time for you. But you can also reach me on my phone through texting if you want. And this is my text number here, 510-387-2946. Please, please, please be in touch. Don't hesitate. Just reach out. If I can't see it, or if I need to sleep or whatever I'm doing, I'll turn it off. I put the phone away. I don't want you to worry, oh, it's 2 a.m. I can't text them. I don't want you to be having anxiety when something doesn't make sense. Or, you know, frankly, I make a mistake on Canvas because there's a lot of detail and somebody comes, do you really mean to publish this? Or is this really the due date? And half the time, I'm the one who made the mistake. And so please be communicative with me. As you can already tell, I chatter a lot. So talking is cool. And I'm here for you guys to tutor if you want to have some Zoom times with me, that we go deeper in the material. Every Monday morning at 11 o'clock, I'll meet just on Zoom for a good half hour or more, depending on what you guys need. But for sure, what we do in that section, in that time, is preview the week. So in the beginning of a week, we know sort of how the week looks that comes up, and we can also have good questions and answers in that time frame. And we're talking lecture. The lab portion is done by Carlos Estrella, and he will talk to you guys about how he structures the in-person part tomorrow when you guys have the first night. What else is there to say? So this is the first page. You've probably seen this video, otherwise you're not in right here right now. You have a few links here. You have a link that goes to course material. That's basically all the modules. The Canvas is organized in sections, and they call those modules. The syllabus is just a link to the syllabus. I want you to go through this syllabus. I have the main parts done. I'll go through it a little bit. And we're still working on coordinating a few of the latter sections in terms of that the lab and the lecture are congruent with one another. This goes to study tools, which is a link that we're seeing in a minute anyway. But it talks about flashcards and sort of, I want to, a lot of you are all totally familiar with studying, so that's totally cool. But I also want to catch the newbies, the ones who sort of come, you know, back to school or are new to this kind of sciencey anatomy stuff, where a lot of it is labeling and learning what is what called and so forth. So there's a few tools that I go through. This link goes to the video that I'm making right now, that we're making. So for people who, you know, tune in a little later, it's an easy access. And then this here is a Zoom link that is always there, that you can meet with one another online 24/7, meaning like you can have study sessions or so. So just have a room in the background that's designated for Merced. That is you guys, is your classroom. That is that I can meet with you as well. But that way you have a virtual sort of study space that you can collaborate with if you want and so forth. I know you also meet in person, which is probably the most. If you don't use this, that's fine. But that's a possibility for, and sometimes people utilize it for like study groups or Q&As, or if there's a group project or something like that. Anyway, let's just dive into it. And of course, any questions, please interrupt me. So far, so good?
Yes.
Good. Okay, then the way I'm going to talk about it right now is let's go through one of the weeks, one of the modules. I'm not going to do the first one as I go through the generic sort of format, because the first week is a little busier, as you've probably already seen. But most of these are just organizing things. It's not a big deal. Just looks like it's a lot. But each week starts with the preview that we do Mondays, a recording for later viewing in there that I put in. Usually it goes up a couple hours after we do it. And so I just have to sort of download it and process it a little bit. And then the second thing here is objectives and assignments. And in there, what I list, and hopefully there's not too many mistakes and so many little details. So if you catch something, please don't hesitate reaching out. But in here, what I have listed is what do we learn this week, or once you went through it, what can you do? Because so it's, you know, then talk about explaining it, right? That's sort of back to a little bit of that. What are the skills that you actually learn in massaging this material into your brain cells? And then I have a list of the activities, just sort of, you know, that way nobody misses anything. Most people end up looking at this a little, and the activities sort of show up in the module anyway. So you can see that here. You can see this is the introduction. Then we have a learn section, and then we have an apply section. And this is where we have activities. The lab section is going to be filled with the stuff that you do in person. So let's go through it. When we learn multiple different ways. I like this concept of teaching things in multiple different formats, and then the students, because students have multiple different ways of learning. And so I definitely do video lectures. I have them speaking into the computer as a voiceover PowerPoint lecture, or I also, and see down here, you can see how long they are. So they're shorter, but more of them. But then I also have an in-class lecture where I was doing recordings or videos, thinking I'm going to watch them and get better at teaching. But then when the pandemic is like, oh, look, I got a lot of videos. And so a lot of people actually like those too, because it's a little more interactive in the classroom. So just check out which ones you like. And I also have everything is basically on YouTube in playlists. And so if that's an easier access for you, because if you're like on the app, by the way, I don't know. Have you guys checked the Canvas app? Are you using the Canvas app?
Yeah, actually, I do use the Canvas app quite a lot, actually.
Yeah, me too. I really like the Canvas app. I think it's, I mean, of course, I'm doing the grading on my side, but, you know, like even discussions and making videos and uploading those and so forth. because whatever I do with you guys in the lecture part, I want you, like in discussions, I want you to utilize videos if you want. I don't want you to have to type and sit there in the chair. I want you to utilize the way that you best communicate. It's about the content, not the format. As far as, I mean, obviously, if you can't read it, then, you know, if you draw or if you write on a paper and I can't read it, then we have to talk about that. But it's about your format, not about what I'm doing. And so, you know, we try at least to have multiple ways of input. And also multiple ways of me delivering the information. So the second way is basically all the important points I give you as a bullet point again. And in here. So this is great, for example, for flashcards. Although you don't really need necessarily make flashcards, because my lecture tests are open book. Because I'm not going to be, you know, proctoring you and figuring out weird ways. I just rather have you learn how to apply the information. And so my tests are open book. We have 3 tests in the lecture portion, and they're only covering the material that we have in those sections and not cumulative. And I have really extensive test reviews that you can download and look at. Actually, I'm going to show you those. Make sure I don't forget to show you those, because I want to, when you go through the material, it's like if you actually have the test review already handy, then it's a reverse engineering situation. And so you really, I feel like you process the material and organize it that way, which again speaks to want to teach it to somebody else. Yeah, absolutely. I teach you also, or I go through the process of how I create my PowerPoint material, which is go through Google and take images and make my booklets of pictures, and then I can teach it. And so if you actually like to teach stuff like that, if you have, I encourage my students to make their own sort of anatomy atlas with stuff they get from Google, because, you know, for the most part, the stuff is accurate. Mostly, and this is a general an introduction class later on. You know, if you find mistakes, you'll learn which one, if the muscle attachment is slightly off or so. But for us to in the starting stages, or you know, when I need to work on a muscle, obviously I need to know exactly where it is and which one exactly it is. But that's a really, you know, an application thing that's further down for. Or not even anything in the stars. Most of my MD patients, they go like, I don't know, I have to take your anatomy class again after working that long in MD world. Anyway, I'm chattering away here. So this is multiple ways of giving you the information over, and then once you get that information or to process that information that I'm delivering to you, we have multiple ways of doing that. I want to have you work the material from multiple different angles, and then by the end you know what's going on. So the first one, every lecture has a questionnaire laid behind it, where you go in, and in a quiz format. The tests are in quiz format, so you're getting used to that format if you haven't been yet. But every lecture has questions behind it, where you read a paragraph and you answer a question. Most of the time, it's not that big of a deal of a question. It's more about you reading the paragraph again and you're understanding or you're processing the material. You marinate the material into your brain cells. And the way you do that, if you think about neurology, is you repeat the material and understand it again and again. And the more you understand it, the easier it comes to remember it. And so that's sort of my philosophy behind the way I do things. I also made videos of everything. And so if you actually say like, oh, this doesn't make sense, you can go and watch this video or scroll forward or whatever, you know, unfortunately, it would be nice if I would have a timed which question, but that's a lot of work. At some point, maybe I do that. But I explain everything in a video format. So you got a background. And I don't have a problem if you do that. I'm totally fine if you do that. Don't feel like you're cheating or anything. It's about processing the material. All right, so that's every lesson has questions behind it, and then we have other things like discussions. Here in this chapter, we have the first few chapters. We have some concepts that I want you to discuss. I want you to talk about if there's a few prompts. Here's only 2 left. In the cytology chapter, it's only the first 3 chapters that have that. I want you to talk about protein synthesis, which is making proteins, and also cell division, in your words or in your video, even though you have like videos behind here that explain again. But these are things that are a little deeper, that sometimes cause a little bit more challenge to understand for the students. And so where that's the case, I'm building these concept discussions. As we talk, I'm thinking I might need to do a few more chapters of those. But for us, it's these 3 beginning chapters, have those. And discussions in general, what discussions mean is you have a prompt, you talk about it in a post, either make a video, an audio, a typing, upload a picture, and again, your format. If you want to know if I accept what you want to do, shoot me a text, a prompt, and we'll talk about it. I'm pretty open. It's creativity is important to me. And then you reply to a couple of other people's posts. And so in an understanding concept, like if you don't understand at all, although this one is pretty one you just look up, it's not that complex. But if you don't understand it, then you say, hey, I really don't understand it. Can somebody help me? And you have a back and forth. So I'm also looking for that. I'm looking for a dialogue. I'm looking for interactions. I'm not just simply looking for you doing your work in solitary and then, you know, just going through the mechanics. At least the less we can do it that way. Oh, sorry. The less we can do it that way, the better. And the due date for the here, like here's September 3rd. The due date is the date I want you to have the first post done. And then a week later, I want you to have the 2 replies. Although honestly, if you do it all at once, you're probably spending less time on it, consecutively. So I would consider doing that way. But that's sort of how every discussion is structured. And from a point perspective, I want to also talk about that briefly. Except for the 3 tests, every one of my activities is structured in a way that you can either take it over and over, like the questions here, and they're not timed, so you can really spend your time on the process, and the highest score will count. And so that's busy work, it's processing work. And then in discussions, if you don't do something the right way or the way that I ask you to, I basically give you 0 points, and then when you do it, I give you all the points. In an initial post is generally speaking 5 points, and then the reply. No, wait a minute. I have to look at it back up. I forgot which way it is exactly right now, but it's usually a little bit more points on the post, and then the rest of the points on the 2 replies. And if you and I go back over and over, and I keep recreating that, or I more like allocating you the points. It's really the point of it. I mean, obviously, if you just go through the motions and I catch that, I'll reach out and say, like, dude, we got to talk about this, because it's about learning. Education is about learning. So I call myself your learning coach, not your teacher in some ways. All right. So that's sort of the fundamentals of the discussions. And then we have other things, like we have on this chapter, I want you to make a cell model. And so that's not this week. That's just actually, let me not even go into it. We'll talk about that when we do week 3. But I also have a few other things, and we can catch that in week 1 as we get into this now here. Into our preview for this week, we have health kits. And what I've done here is I have created, especially in the pandemic, when we couldn't go into the classroom, I've created ways to try to give you the material and process the material in a way that is real life based. And so, for example, the beginning chapter, we can just do that right now. This is this week. It's actually the last 4 weeks or something. Because we're talking about our body. Anatomy is our body. And my job, I feel like, is to explain to you as well as possible and to relate it to the real life, that you can take something other than just, oh, this muscle is called this muscle is called this, but something useful that you can carry on and make your life better, or have better conversations with your doctor, that you understand what they're doing with you and are not just a passive, rider, because, there's a lot of choices. And medicine is quite complex, and it's a race. There's never enough time. And so you have to be also on the tip of our toes to make sure we catch all the little mistakes along the way and not just blame everybody doing it wrong, because it's too much. I've been in the world of medicine. I work with medical groups. I work with Sutter. It's a complex situation, and it's more complex on the admin side than on the doing medicine side. So I feel like we patients need to add a little to that thinking as well, and understand how we work. And it's complicated, but it's not that complicated. It's just a lot of stuff. That's really a lot of what I personally think, at least, until we get into the medical doctor level of, or a specialty level of understanding the depth of a physiology or so. Anyway, one of the health kits that I do in the first few weeks is giving us an understanding of our body a little more. And I feel like this sort of the wellness thing. I'm an old new age kid, so I talk about wellness. But medically, it's really morbidity that is a terminology that we talk about. And that morbidity is how do we feel? Do I feel well or do I feel shitty? There's this joke that's like, how do you know somebody is over 40 or under 40? And you know it by the fact that when they get up, they grunt, which I thought was a joke, but apparently it's not a joke. It was on NPR, although maybe that was still a joke. But as we get older, things sort of start being a little bit less well in the body, and it's a little harder. And a lot of that we have control over. When I wake up, I'm 53. When I wake up, I got maybe a headache, a stinger here. I work physically on patients, so it's hard work. After I come back from a 2-hour walk with my dog, I feel fine. A lot of, but so I can do a lot to help myself feel better. And the three aspects of where we can do something about is really the nutritional, the physical, and the emotional portions. And so I have gone through a self-assessment of different things aspects of life that we can sort of analyze and that we can change and make better. And so I talk about here, they come up right here, lifestyle assessment. I have a little video. You don't have to watch it, but if you want. But here I talk about those categories, and I want you to self-assess yourself. How am I in my, posture, for example? Say 1 to 10. Oh, I'm pretty good. Okay, I'm a 6 or 7, an 8, and you give yourself a score. And you do all of that through these things. And so that's part of that exercise I want to do is give an assessment of yourself on the inside, of how you are. These all relate to the three aspects, these three main things: physical, chemical, emotional. And then I go through a process of how the science of creating a routine briefly, which basically is the reward system thing. It's just like making sure that if you do something that, you want to create a routine to make you feel better, because we're going to, of course, then do some routines. I want you to sort of understand that, if let's say you go walking for a half an hour outside, you're gonna give yourself a reward afterwards. If it's hard, if it's not hard, don't worry about it. If you don't need to give yourself a reward if you want to drink a cup of coffee. For people who like coffee, that's usually a self-motivated routine. It's not that hard. That's more likely possibly one we want to maybe decrease a little bit, but then we need a reward again, right? If we don't do that. And so that's a little talk about that. So that's kind of cool. And then the third part, and this is the cool part, I think, I'm going to want us to do one thing for 3 weeks. Well, 3 times 5 days. You get 2 days off. And that's and these are things we should do anyway to have us have a good, well, not we should or shouldn't, but it's good if we do. I want us to either go walking 30 minutes or doing exercise. It doesn't have to be walking, especially when it's really hot outside. Or drink water. 2 quarts is about 2. It's about the sort of the average, what we talk about, public health, what we should be drinking each day. Or we do something like meditate or pray or reflect type activity for about 10 minutes a day. And so each of these activities touches on one of the aspects that we can shift a little bit and make better to feel better as a whole. And so I want us to do one of these. You choose one of these, most likely do them anyway. But what I want you to do is I want you to track it. I want us to track it. I do all 3 of them. and I participate in these things, because I always need to be reminded too to bring this anatomy stuff closer to myself and how is it in my daily life. And it's not just an intellectual thing up here and everything else falls apart. And, that's not, we can do that when we're young, but as we get older, it's a little harder. So if we're learning some of that as we're younger, it's easier through the life process. Anyway, I want you to choose what you want to do, and that's this week. You choose something, and then starting next week, I make groups and we start doing those activities. And then each day you're doing it, you're texting a group of like 5, 6 people that I put together. So it's not too much that we get. And you say, hey, I did the 2 quarts of water drinking, and God darn it, how it made me feel. I felt really clear in my head, but I had to pee all night long. And so, you say a little bit of what's going on with that, integrating that in your life, feeling-wise. And so we then do that for a few weeks, and at the end, we reassess our lifestyle and see how is it, how are we in those 7 aspects, and we close it out with a discussion. And we close every health kit out with a discussion that we're doing. Like next week, when we talk about chemistry, we'll, instead of, just doing chemical things, we're going to go read food labels and see, because most of us, I don't read, when I go to the store, read the food label, maybe a little bit, but not really fully analyze it. So I'll have an exercise where we analyze a few of foods that we get a sort of a feel for what is the chemistry that I'm eating inside. In the food sort of thing. So it brings it a little closer to home. That's sort of the idea with that. Does that make sort of sense, or I'm speaking Chinese over here?
No, you make sense.
Okay. Is that kind of sound okay or like draggy?
Yeah, sounds good.
That's a hard one to answer. I'm sorry. I won't put you on the spot, actually. It took me years to implement these things and not feel like I'm a complete fool doing that. But it's important, I think, to bring these things, and you guys are, as a generation of students, you're really open to lifestyle and feeling good and things like that. So I'm really grateful for that. So that's how I integrate the material that way, and it's called health kits. And so not every chapter has one of those, but we do, and most of them have something or another. And then the first week, I also have a netiquette contract. I want to have sort of a baseline rules of engagement, the way we talk to each other, that were nice and stuff, because we don't see each other, and online can be, I just need a baseline rule. All of us do it anyway. It's just at least, think briefly so everybody's on the same page. That's why it shouldn't take long to do that thing. And then you just write down, I do this, blah, blah, and I expect my other fellow students to do this, blah, blah. Then I got a couple of orientation questions, because what we do here, the way I structure the whole session, at the beginning of the weeks before they start, the few modules, this one is from the school, that's school student support, that you find stuff about Canvas and so forth. You don't really need to work through that if you don't have any issues with it or need to learn from it. You can always reach out to me too if you have questions. Then I have a module on learning tools. As I said before, I go through flashcards a lot because I like the flashcard system. That's a repetitive sort of format. A lot of apps are really great too these days. But a lot of the science stuff that you have to learn factoids and facts is really well done with flashcards. I did this through my whole chiropractic school, and it really, really served me well, because it's actually a time saver, not a time user, because you really organize your material. And then I got a little TED Talk that I really like here too, that I want you to watch and reflect a little bit on education and all of that. And because it's about creativity in this talk, and it's really something that I think is very important. At least it's important for me. I've been doing my work for about 30 years as a chiropractor and was body worker. I've been fortunate to work on a lot of athletes, including Raiders and Giants and Stanfords. And it really is the drive is really the interest, is really the creativity that really, and I'm fortunate, I feel very fortunate that I'm allowed to do that. But I think that keeping it creative is really one of the things that helps me stay really interested in what I do. So I just want to reflect a little bit about that, and that's in the learning tools, and we have an activity on that. That's one of the discussions in the first week. And then the orientation is just hello, this is my name. And then here's about Mr. Estrella, Dr. Estrella. That's he has an introduction and how to contact me. We already talked about that. Mostly the easiest is prompt or text. Then after that, it's sort of the Canvas email. And then after that, it's, I don't know. Well, we meet on Zoom. We can meet on Zoom. We just have to organize that. One thing that I talk about in here is the diversity. I'm obviously detecting accent. I'm Swiss. In the background, you see a picture of the area I grew up in. This is a picture. I'm not sitting there. I just don't need you to see my, worry about seeing my office at home here. But then I also talk about biases a little bit. And I have these two pictographs, one here and one here. So I want you guys to reflect a little bit about that more. In the fact that we want to try to dispel that, and we want to try to not be biased with each other, but take the diversity of one another as an opportunity to learn from one another. And I think nowadays that's just, every time it's important, but right now is a time again where people feel like very strong about things. And I think it's very important that we just listen to each other and everybody has something to say. And that goes kind of together with that netiquette lecture, the way those PowerPoints that are there that I want you to go through. This just talks a little bit about ethics and how to do that, how to work with each other. So we do have an activity in week 1 that talks about diversity. Here, I want you to update your personal profile and introduce yourself. And I want to talk about, and I have an example here, briefly video on a bias that you like to get rid of, dispel. Have you been exposed to that? It's really struggled. For me, it was education. I was always sort of this, I was a dream kid. I wasn't the one who was like focused on some things. Like it took a while. And I felt bad about that. And it's and I got sort of like, I felt I got sort of bullied about it a little bit, even though maybe, no, there were certainly some parts. And so, even that's something to talk about. And, so we all have certain things that sort of hinder us for letting us fully express ourselves, I think, to the fullest extent. That's another thing that biases can bring for people. So talk briefly about it. This is mine here, 2 minutes. It's also about making a video. So I want you to make a video as you post. You go to the button where it records a video and you make a video online. Or, of course, this is where I will go with the app. The app works fabulous. You make a video and upload it and attach it in the discussion. So that's perfect. So this is one where I would like for you to make a video. That way you've done the process at least once. And we know how to do it. And so maybe, it's easier to do it after. The profile updating is up here where you go into the account and then you go into the profile. And I can't really have one here because I'm in the test student, so it's denied. Oh gosh, I have to get out of here. So then let's just go here. There you go. If you want, you can put up a picture. You don't have to do that, or an avatar. And then, your name, the way you'd like to have it, maybe pronounced, said, what gender you'd like to be said, if that's applicable. And then, we need to, know about it. And then a little biography, who are you? Say hello to the class, maybe where you're from, a little bit, maybe professionally, what you're doing or what you're doing in school, educationally, what your goals are. And then maybe something outside. I like to hike. I like to do something, just say hello to your classmate. It doesn't have to be anything big. You see mine, it's not that long. But that's, so that's the other part of this activity that I want you to do. And now, of course, I don't know where to go. Sorry about this. All right, we're moving right along. I'm sorry, I'm going over. If you need to leave, please do so. If you have any questions, please tell me. Let me go back to student view because otherwise you see kind of weird views. And I didn't even have to sum her up. I was teaching to sum. You would think I don't really know how to navigate this puppy. All right. So then we have the syllabus. Oh, and of course, if you want to help me improve the course, I'm always open for that. I love that. I can't necessarily do all of them, but I try to incorporate all of the stuff you're telling me. So when you get to the syllabus, we talk a little bit about the course, what it is. We already kind of know that. This is all sort of prerequisites. If you're in the course, I don't think there's a worry about that. Objectives, learning outcome, that sort of language, technical language. We're learning about the body kind of stuff, cells, and so you can read through that yourself. And then the class material. This course is fully online. You don't have to buy a book, but the OpenStax, very good book, doesn't cost you anything. I use their pictures. That's actually a lot of the pictures I use. But also the bullet points is sort of the main stuff that I sort of squeezed out of multiple books that I went through over the years teaching and also taking classes myself, of course. So it's all here, but OpenStax is an option. If you want to buy a book, then you can also, if you go to Merced is a good book, Martini is a good book. You can read them by me, and also I'm sure Dr. Estrella will also have a lot to say on that. He's been teaching for 30 years. That's a long time. And then attendance. Well, this is my part is online, so you don't have to be anywhere. You just have to do your stuff. It's asynchronous. However, if you are late with your work, I do have a makeup policy where I deduct. So if like everything is due on Sunday, like this week's is due Sunday night, midnight, 11:59. One time I got in trouble because I turned it in at 12:00 and it didn't take it. But you can still turn it in. It's just every day will take 1% off up to a total of 10%. And so even if you're 10 days late, you still get 90%. So that's not the end of the world, but it does help everybody to sort of stay on track more or less. That's sort of the idea with that. Hold on. I hope my computer is not dying on me. I did not anticipate that. Sorry about that. Real quick. It's the battery cable. All right, there we go. Okay, then what else we got? Academic honesty policy. Well, it's open book, so we're not too concerned about it. Then the course schedule, we're starting and up to about here, up to extremity muscles, I haven't figured out. And then down here, we're working on adjusting with the lab. So don't take the lower portion too seriously yet in terms of the dates or in terms of when we do what dates. We're going to make it so it's mostly, there might be a couple like the integumentary that's out of sync, but mostly it's connected together, which, is very important for you guys. But we have not taught this before together, and so we're sort of adjusting the last pieces as we speak. What else is there? It's, of course, all of this is self-explanatory. This is also an activity, and you can look through this more of the diversity, but we already talked about. So that's pretty much the main part of the syllabus. Oh, wait, we need to talk about grade. Grade, very important. See, this is where you need to say hello and interrupt me. So grade, lab 50%, lecture 50%. Anything we do in lecture is part of that 50%. So then out of that 50%, 10% of that is these questions that we do after every lecture. We talked about that. That's 10%. And then 15% of the whole grade is the discussions and the health kits integration. Health kit, not health integration. And so that's also really doing work. So you get pretty far, 25% in this class. Half of your lecture grade can be done by just participating and doing and being part of it. Then the lecture exams, the 3 exams total together, another 25%. However, they are well organized. I suffer from a lot of testing anxiety, so I want to be very sensitive to people who do. So I structure everything that by the time we get to the exam, I want you to be prepared for it, be organized for it, and then C, that means you know where to look it up and apply it. So that's how I work in terms of my online stuff. I took a class one and they had honor log. Did you ever take a class with honor log, you guys? Any of you? No? Is still anybody here? Hello?
Yes, sorry.
Well, that's all right. Did you ever take a class with honor log?
I don't think so,
Well,
no.
that's good. I took one class, and this was an anatomy class, and I teach anatomy. And I just took a class to see how, where am I at and stuff like that. And this guy used honor log, and he only used it once because I freaked out myself. Where you like take a picture of the room, and then they look. If you look down on your keyboard, they think you're cheating. I mean, nothing that I think is useful. It sure doesn't, help the process of learning. You really think about it.
Yeah, that kind of sounds like anxiety inducing, really.
Yeah, it's like, and you're talking about, I don't know, maybe 5% of the people who feel like cheating is going to get them through life. It's not really that many people. And so anyway, so we're not doing that. This is why I'm sort of almost anticipative of that. I want to, you have to learn. But anyway, you're going to definitely get some memorization in the lab. That's for sure. But I have another activity to plan your studies because this class is 4 units, 2 and 2 lab and 2 lectures. So that means 2 of those are lecture units. Each unit is expected to be doubled for work to be done with it. So you're looking around plan-wise 6 hours a week where you want to sort of focus or do some focusing on this lecture stuff. But that means, you can watch videos or listen to videos. You don't have to watch them in the car, but you can listen to the stuff, for example, when you're commuting or so. So this should be hopefully user-friendly that way. But I want you to spend some time and allocate where you're going to do that study time. It's mostly for yourself, but visualize it, take a picture, however you like to do it, upload it, and that's your 5 points for that. Shouldn't take you more than like 15 minutes, but at least you thought about when am I going to study this stuff, and it's not an afterthought. You won't believe how much that changes the outcome that I have this activity in here. Then we already talked about this introduction anatomy questions that we talked about that in the cell real quick. And then I talked about the study tools. I want you to have a discussion on that after you read through that study tool stuff. That way I know actually you guys are looking at it. And I think it's interesting information. Some of it is probably a little outdated, latest science, but it's very useful. And then that's the understanding concept, and that's the health kit that I already described to you before. And then each week, and look, he put something up on the lab for tomorrow. And then each week we have a wrap up. And the wrap up consists of a couple of things. One thing is a congratulation. You did this week and you learned this week. So that's, that way you check off everything you did. Not really, if you went through this whole module roster, you're actually done with it. You don't really have to worry about looking at that. But then the one thing, the further learning resources, I put a YouTube link up here to this one by Marion Diamond, and she's UC Berkeley. She passed away by now. But she's old school and she writes everything on the board. That's why I put it up, because she's really good. She did a lot of brain stuff. She wrote the coloring book on brain stuff by Marion Diamond. It doesn't say brain stuff, but I don't know the title. But it's by her. If you Google her, if you're interested in that sort of thing. And it's really, she high end. She used to have Einstein's brain in her possession. I mean, she's that level of person. So that's, I thought, putting her YouTube up if you want to know more or have an interest in that kind of a teaching style. She's really fun to watch. And then each week I finish up with the questions and tips. And in that, I want you to reflect briefly and say, hey, take a couple moments. Do I have a question about this week that wasn't clear, that I want to ask the question, or me, because I read these things? These are the ones I read. Well, I read all the stuff, but this is definitely what I pay a lot of attention to, because is also where I see how the class sort of goes. Is everybody having question marks, or a lot of people are okay with it? Is it overwhelming? How did you feel this week? Do you have an aha moment? Oh, I really understood this, or this picture was really cool, or something like that. So I just want you, are you familiar with Padlets? Have you had that before? Any of you?
No, I'm actually not familiar.
So what you do in the Padlet, you click on this button here, and then you can type, or you can do upload or whatever you want to do, basically. And then when you type stuff, you type it in stuff, whatever, you publish it, and then it shows up like a little post-it. And then everyone shows up at a post, and then you can talk to each other a little bit that way. So let's say, for example, this, I didn't understand this at all, and you put it in here, and then somebody catches it and says like, oh, that was easy for me. Maybe think about it that way, and then you maybe understand, or something, stuff like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Now I got to cancel that thing. It's like people are like, what the heck is he trying to say? All right. Yeah, and so that's just sort of like closing out the week. It's not, it gives you some points. Oh, and make sure you have either logins with your Merced login, the regular login you use, or just write your name at the post. That I give you. Then I can give you credit. So everything, your points is my money. So everything I want you to do something with is points attached to it, right? Of course, except for the lecture, because that's where you get the information from. All right. Do you guys have any questions at this moment?
I wanted to know if there was like a separate lab manual we would need to purchase for the lab class.
I don't know. That will be a discussion tomorrow that you will definitely have. But I do think there is optional stuff. I'm not sure if he has you purchase a lab manual. I think there is. I think he is trying to also be sort of low cost on that front. But if you could ask him tomorrow, Mr. Chair, that would be great. That he'll definitely clarify that. For my end, you don't need to buy anything. If you like to buy something, or secondhand, the stuff is not expensive. In anatomy, what everybody can use who goes into this stuff was interested is in an atlas, and the one that's really used by medical people a lot in America is Netter, Netter, Anatomy Atlas. And if you want to know a link or something, just reach out, and I'll text you a link where to get something, or which one I think is great.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. No, it is useful, but you don't need to. You could just YouTube everything. Google, and then you Google, and then you press on images, and you get a lot of stuff that's really cool.
Okay.
All right. Good. All right. Any other question?
I wanted to ask if there were any separate lab exams.
Yes. So the 50% of the grade is in the lab end. And he has, from my understanding, 5 sort of exams on that front that he gets the biggest part of the score from.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yes. So that's so it's like, from you guys' perspective, in that way, it's almost like 2 different classes. It's like not 2, they add together, but his rules are, because he's in person, are a little bit different than mine in those, what you do in there, because in online is a lot of discussions and ways of engaging that. In an in-person way, you do it automatically.
Okay. Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's I think it's a cool format. I'm really kind of I'm very excited about the class. Always, I love teaching the stuff. But I'm also thinking lecture online, lab in person is fairly ideal, I think, to pick up the stuff, because the lecture, when you can go back on YouTube and back and forth and have subtitles, for example, that's much better and easier than sitting there and trying to take notes and stuff we miss, because I can't listen, think, and take notes at the same time. I just can't do that. And I would argue nobody can. So I want to know, through the semester, how this goes for you and how you like it, and how, how the different elements work, and we're still new at this. It's been a few years, so we're getting better at it, but we're still needing as much input from you as possible to better jobs. Okay. Good. Well, if nothing else, I don't need to keep you. We can close it out, and I wish you a wonderful week. And I'm just a text away. All right. And hopefully we can communicate with everyone through this week.
Okay. Thank you. It was nice meeting you.
Very nice. Thank you for coming. Bye. See you next week.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.